This playthrough is rated M for mature.
Greetings and salutations, viewers. Vauldemare back here with more Hakuōki, Stories of the Shinsengumi. In the last episode, the Shinsengumi dealt a blow to the Chozu and those against the shogunate. A year had passed, and the Shinsengumi's power has increased. And our main female character, all she's doing is serving tea and kind of walking around. She ain't doing much for an MC, is she? But perhaps today, she'll do a bit more. Let's find out. Ito? Kondo was clearly choosing his words carefully, in a very nearly desperate attempt to change the subject.
もしよければ、大使たちの稽古でも見学に行きませんかね?
If you would care to, perhaps you might come and have a look at our training regimen. Ito's eyes narrowed and his mouth curled in a small smile.
まあ、素敵なお誘いですね。ぜひご一緒させていただきますわ。
My, how thoughtful of you. Yes, of course, I would love to have a look.
男たちの汗臭さへ浸りに行くのも実に愉快なことじゃございませんか。
Ah, the training room, air heavy with the sweat of men, straining to better themselves, truly a delight.
汗臭さですか。確かに道場は熱気がこもってるかもしれませんな。
The sweat of men? Yes, I suppose you do have a point. The training room has grown rather musty. Ito could be a very peculiar person. The two men left the room, chatting together as if nothing was wrong, and all eyes towards Sanan.
サンナンさん、あんなやつの言うことなんざ気にする必要ねえからな。
Sanan, don't listen to that asshole, okay? Sanan said nothing. He stood up silently and left the room.
サンナンさんもかわいそうだよな。 最近は大使連中からも避けられてる。
Man, I feel bad for him. Even the men are avoiding him these days. What? It was the first time I'd heard such a thing, but then again, I didn't normally see anyone but the captains. I had no idea.
誰に対してもあの調子だからな。大使も怯えちまって近寄りたがらねえんだ。
Well, he's been kind of a jerk lately. I imagine that's why. It wasn't hard for me to see why they'd feel that way. Sanan had gotten even worse in the last several weeks.
昔はああじゃなかったんだけどな。表面的には親切で面倒見が良かったし。
He wasn't always like that, you know. Back in the day, he was always acting like he was looking out for everyone.
だな。あんなに優しかった外面が今見る影もねえや。
Yeah, he was real nice, at least on the surface. Not the left of that now. Do you really mean that? The way they spoke, it sounded as if any kindness Sanan had shown was always a facade.
近藤さんもなんだってあんなのが気に入ったんですかね。
What the hell does Kondo see in that Ito guy? Akita and Hijikata had largely ignored Nakakura and Harada, but their faces were dark and stormy. It wasn't difficult to guess why.
そんなこと俺が知るかよ。どうせ口先三寸で丸め込まれたんだろう。
I knew. Perhaps just blew the wool over Kondo's eyes with some well-spoken bullshit.
じゃあ土方さんが返品してきてくださいよ。新選組にこんなのいりませんって。
Then why don't you get rid of him, Hijikata? Tell the Shinsengumi doesn't need him. Hijikata let out a frustrated sigh and pinched the bridge of his
近
nose.
藤さんが許可するわけねえだろう。すっかり伊藤に心酔してるみてえだしな。
No way Kondo will go for that. He adores Ito.
伊藤と一緒に加入した連中もそんな扱いされちゃ黙ってねえだろう。
Besides, when he joined, he brought a bunch of men with him. You think they won't make us think if we kick him out? Hijikata was right. He didn't like it any more than Okada did, but they were in a tight spot.
役に立たない人だな。無茶を通すのが鬼副長の仕事でしょうに。
Well, damn! Aren't you supposed to be the demon? The commander from hell? You're supposed to make the impossible happen.
だったら掃除。てめえが副長やれ。んで、伊藤派の連中を屯所から追い出せ。
Fine, Tsuji. How about we make you commander? Then we can kick Ito and his guys out, right?
嫌ですよ、そんなめんどくさいの。
Hell no! That's way too much trouble. He gave a grin as he laughed, but when he finished, he sighed and his face fell. It looked like everyone was happy with Ito, but none of them knew quite what to do about him. Do you dislike Ito too, Saito? I noticed earlier that he kept quiet while the others commiserated, and I was curious about what he thought. He looked at me for a moment, then spoke.
様々な考えを持つ者が所属してこそ、組織は広がりを見せるものだ。
As an organization grows, it will expand to include people who have different ideas and points of view. Then, was he supporting Ito's appointment to deputy commander? I was about to ask him when he continued speaking.
しかし無理な多様化を進めれば、内部から瓦解を始める可能性もある。
However, if one attempts to force this sort of diversity, then the organization will begin to rot from within. His words hung in the air, a dark omen for the future of the Shinsengumi. It was considerate of Ito to join, but his presence seemed to be a recipe for dissension, if not outright disaster. The setting sun glowed through the windows with a warm, rich red, and we decided to move outside in the hope that it might raise our spirits. It's cold. Despite the sun, it seemed that spring was still far away. I wasn't too fond of Ito, but it was Sanden in his condition that truly worried me. I really wish his arm would just heal. That arm, or perhaps more accurate, the lack of it, had been the source of his change in personality. Still, as nice as it would be for Sanden's arm to simply start working again, that seemed like the stuff of a child's fable, not real life. That was when I remembered.
薬でも何でも使ってもらうしかないですね。三男さんも納得してくれるんじゃないかな。
If push comes to shove, he'll have to take it. I don't think Sanden's just gonna give up.
掃除。めったなこと言うもんじゃねえ。幹部が新選組入りしてどうするんだよ。
Don't jinx him, Soji. It's gonna look bad if officers start joining the Corps. The Shinsengumi had sort of something. I don't know what it did exactly, or even what sort of thing it was, but from the way they talked about it, there was some manner of very unpleasant side effects. No, wait, I do remember something. Yes, from what I heard, it seemed that it was the capacity to heal wounds. It had something to do with the core, or corpse. I think it's supposed to be corpse in this case. And it's also something I'm not supposed to know about. If they learned how much I'd picked up, or what I'd put together on my own, I had no doubt that I'd be in serious trouble. Hey, you've been hanging out with them for a year. I think if they found out, I doubt they would just outright murder you again. It was possible that they would even... Really? I mean, would they really have just suddenly distrusted you after all that time? I mean, I don't know. Still, if I could figure out any of it, perhaps I could do something to help. I am the daughter of a well-educated doctor, after all, but you didn't really learn medicine, did you? I'd like to think that I had a little more knowledge of medicine than the average person. Oh, okay. The question remained, then, what should I do? Investigate or return to my room? Aha! Rolling time. Even top, odd bottom. We got an even. We must investigate. We must poke our nose into everyone's business. Night had almost fallen, so I decided to investigate. Now, where should I start? My room was in the Yagi house, which was where the captains lived. It had taken me a while, but I had finally managed to figure out how to navigate the building. Still, there were plenty of rooms that I didn't dare go near, such as Hijikata's. There's the Miyakawa house, too. Miyakawa house. Miyakawa. A samurai family owned the estate adjacent to the Yagi family. They also allowed the Shinsengumi to house troops on their estate. On the other side of the grounds was the Miyakawa house, which was where the soldiers stayed, generally several to a room. I rarely went there, so it was largely unknown to me. If I was to start looking around, I should go to the Miyakawa house or the places in the Yagi house that I haven't been to before. God, they're giving me all these decisions today. Alright, here we go, another. Got it odd. So let's go to the Miyakawa house. Gotta put my dice back in a little case. There we go. Once I was quite sure everyone in the Yagi house was asleep, I made my move. My heart leapt to my throat at even the slightest noise, but either luck or skill was on my side. I made it from my room to the entrance undetected. So far, so good. After all, what normal person would be up and about at such a late hour? Now, what's next?
こんばんは。どこに行くつもり？まさか脱走とか？
Good evening, Hinata. What are you up to? I hope you aren't trying to escape. No, I'm not. Escape hadn't even crossed my mind. Although he wasn't likely to approve of my intentions, leaving the compound certainly wasn't amongst them.
まあいいけど、どうせ君には逃げる当てもないしね。
Really? Alright, fine. I mean, what would you do out here by yourself anyway? You're right. It was a depressing thought, but he was right. Even if I did somehow manage to escape the Shinsengumi, I would lose my best chance of finding my father.
ともかく、君は部屋に戻りなよ。子供が夜遊びする時間じゃないんだから。
Well, whatever you're doing, you should knock it off. Kids shouldn't be playing around in the middle of the night. Hey. My shaky attempt at a protest drew only a laugh from
だけど、もし怖いものを見たら、すぐに声を上げて助けを呼ぶんだよ。
Well, if you see something scary, just make sure you scream right away, alright? Huh? He sounded rather serious for a moment.
一人で何かしようなんて思わなくていいから。わかった。
Don't try and deal with it yourself, okay? You understand what I'm saying? What do you mean by something scary? What could I run into in the Shinsengumi headquarters that would be that scary? He looked almost surprised for a moment, and then his face broke into a grin.
怖い夢とか、怖いお化けとか。あ、大穴で鬼副長なんてどうかな。
Oh, you know, like a nightmare or a ghost or something. Or hey, who knows? You might run into our commander, the demon. That does sound scary. Especially running into the demon. If Hijikata found out that I was walking around the compound without permission... I'm going back to my room now.
いい子だね。僕は中庭でも一回りしてこようかな。
Good girl. I'll just go finish patrolling the inner courtyard then. Well, that was kind of... that kind of ended abruptly. With one last smirk, a small smirk in my direction, he turned and left. My shoulders sagged with relief, and I leaned heavily against the wall. How long was he here? There was no way I could get into the Miyakawa house without Okita catching me at it. Still, I'd worked up the courage to get this far. I was about to let that go to waste. Perhaps it would be better if I stuck to the Yagi house instead, and just made sure not to go anywhere Hajikawa might be. Wait. I'd been so surprised I hadn't stopped to think. Why was Okita up so late? It almost seemed as if he was waiting for someone to leave the Yagi house, but there was no way he could have known I would try. If not me, then who? It was nighttime at the Yagi house and completely silent. I felt a little guilty for sneaking around, so I tiptoed down the halls as quietly as possible. Huh? Had my ears been playing tricks on me, or had someone just walked into the common room? I'd be in trouble if someone saw me, so I did my best to blend into the shadows and hide. A ninja you are not, main character, but you can try. You'd be surprised what people will miss. After a few moments of heart-pounding seclusion, my curiosity got the best of me. I departed my hiding place and crept towards the common room. Inside was Sanin. Something felt wrong. At least I was at a loss. Should I speak to him, or... Before I could make up my mind, he turned.
まさか君に見つかるとはね。正直予想していませんでしたよ。
I never thought it'd be you who would catch me. How unexpected. Huh? I had no idea what he meant, but his expression caught me off guard. He had a peaceful smile, something I hadn't seen on his face for I didn't know how long. It was a bit too peaceful, as if all his worries had suddenly left him. Sanin? The moonlight glinted momentarily off of something in his hand.
これが気になりますか?
You're wondering what this is, I imagine. Blood. He held it up as soon as he spoke. It was a tiny glass bottle filled with a crimson liquid that looked to me like poison.
これは君の父親である光道さんが幕府の密使を受けて作った薬です。
This is a special treatment developed by your father, Koda, under orders from the shogunate. What? The shogunate ordered my father to do something?
もともと西洋から渡来したものだそうですよ。人間に劇的な変化をもたらす飛薬としてね。
They say it first appeared in the West. The contents of this tiny vial can utterly transform a person. What do you mean by utterly transform?
ええ、 単純な表現をするのでしたら、主には筋力と自己治癒力の増強でしょうか。
To put it simply, it makes them stronger and heightens their recuperative abilities. If that was true, then...
しかし、それには致命的な欠陥がありました。
There is, however, a rather serious flaw. His smile twisted only a little.
強すぎる薬の効果が人の精神を狂わすに至ったのです。
It was, I suppose you could say it was too strong. It worked as advertised, but drove those who benefit from it mad.
投薬された人間がどうなるか。
You've seen the results yourself, haven't you?
昨日ご覧になりましたね。
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt him. Ah, of course. I'd seen the results of the madness the night I first met the Shinsengumi. I was wondering when they were going to get back to that part of the plot.
どうやら思い当たられたようですね。君が
Yes, I see that you
あの
understand.
大使たち。
Oh. Dang it. You tricked me, game. His eyes thinned and he seemed almost pleased.
薬を与えられた彼らは理性を失い、血に狂う化け物となり下がりました。
They were no longer capable of what might call rational thought, and were little more than bloodthirsty monsters. How horrible. What had happened to the soldiers I'd seen was terrible, but what pressed most heavily on my mind was a single question. Even if it were on the orders from the shogun, why had my father been involved in such an awful thing? I struggled to process it, but Sandon only kept talking.
戦場で血が流れるたびに狂っていては、たとえ強靭な肉体を手に入れようと意味がありません。
If they lose control whenever they see blood, then they're hardly much use in battle, are they? No matter how powerful and skillful they may be.
行動さんは新選組という実験場でこの薬の改良を行っていたのですよ。
Kodo conducted experiments on the corpse during the development of his treatment. No. My father conducting experiments on human beings? That made men go mad at the sight of blood? I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't believe it. I tried to speak, but my chest had grown so tight I could scarcely breathe. Sandon either didn't notice or didn't care.
しかし残念ながら彼は行方不明となり、薬の研究は中断されてしまいました。
Unfortunately, when he disappeared, his research was put on hold.
あの人が残した資料を元にして、私なりに手を加えたものがこれです。
This vial here represents the fruits of my own personal research based on what he left behind. He gave me a small smile and shook the bottle gently. The liquid inside sloshed from side to side, almost lazily.
その原液を可能な限り薄めてあります。
I've diluted it as much as possible. I had so many questions to ask him, but I didn't even know where I might start, so I simply spoke to the first that came to mind. If you drank it, will you be okay? It won't make you go crazy? His brow knit for a moment.
正直なところ、まだ。
No, what? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to. Dang it, I accidentally clicked with the shoulder button. To be quite honest, I'm not entirely sure. I've never tested it on anyone. Although human testing was hardly something I would have condoned, it was clear that he had very little idea what the concoction might actually do to him. His smile faded.
服用すれば私の腕も治ります。薬の調合が成功さえしていればね。
If I take this, my arm will heal. That is, of course, assuming I've mixed it correctly. You mean you're actually considering taking it? He had no guarantee that it wouldn't simply kill him outright, and even if he did survive, it might well drive him insane. You don't need to do that. A substance that could turn one into a bloodthirsty monster was dangerous enough, but a new version of that substance still unfinished?
こんなものに頼らないと私の腕は治らないんですよ。
I have no choice. This is the only way to heal this damned arm. Sandon exploded, and I felt myself instinctively recoil from him.
私はもはや用済みとなった人間です。平大使まで陰口を叩いているのは知っています。
I'm already useless here. Even the men have begun to speak ill of me behind my back. That isn't true. You're a kind man, Sanden. Everyone loves you. Even though he'd been depressed, none of the captains had avoided Sanden or tried to exclude him. They were his friends, and they were just waiting for him to get back on his feet. How could you even ever think that you're useless to them? You should never think that.
剣客として死に、ただ生きた屍になれというのであれば。
There's no life for me as a swordsman. You would ask me to continue in some sort of undeath? His smile was cold and perhaps a little sad.
人としても死なせてください。
Let me die as a person as well. No. Strained with emotion, my voice broke as I cried out. Sanden looked at me and sighed.
どうして君が必死になるんですか。私のことなんて放っておいてください。
What special concern is it of yours? Leave me be. Still, I felt his tone soften despite his words, and he gave me a smile that could have been plucked from the days before his wound when I'd first met him.
成功すれば私の腕も治ります。さして分の悪い賭けではありませんよ。
If I succeed, then my armor will be repaired. The odds against success aren't as terrible as you think. He was doing his best to tell me not to worry, but if he had made a mistake mixing the compounds or his research was flawed somehow, there was no way to know what might happen to him. I couldn't sit by and allow him to do this. Persuade him or scream. Well, what'll the dice tell me what to do? Will the main character try to convince him of his flaw, or will she just out him to the rest of the captains and disparage him from doing it that way instead of diplomacy? Find out next time on Hakuōki, Stories of the Shinsengumi. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next episode.